Hello everyone, buenos dias. As a part of this session, I'm going to walk you through my presentation, which is how to monitor conditional access policies, where we basically will touch a few ways how we can do that and to get most of your data. This presentation is a part of Global Azure community-driven event, and to be specific, Global Azure Spain community. To start, of course, we need to say thank you to all the sponsors of this event. Yes, it's community-driven, but still we need to have support. So thanks to all the supporters of our community. And as a part of our agenda, or through our presentation, I'm going to cover what is actually conditional access policies, but to be fair, I'm going to touch only pretty basic stuff like what is conditional access policy, just to refresh your memory. And then we'll go into details about how to monitor conditional access policies using built-in solutions, where basically you just enabled conditional access policies. You don't have anything out except out-of-the-box function. You don't want to spend more money than you already spent, and basically what are the options you have. Then we'll go through some sort of a progression based on complexity of build solutions. So what will happen if we implement log analytics workspace integration, how that's going to help, what are the new features we'll be able to see, and basically what are the new use cases we'll be able to cover. And then at the end, we'll try to think like maybe Power BI can help us through this integration, and maybe it will create some new features for us or open new use cases we never thought about. But to start, obviously I have to go through like presentation about myself a bit. So my name is Alexander Vonyurikhin. I'm working in EPAM Systems as a lead security system engineer here in Malaga, Spain. I was a Microsoft MVP in enterprise mobility a few years ago. Basically, most of my career I was working either in device management area, to be specific, mobile devices, or with access controls. And for the past several years, I switched to working specifically for securing Azure environments for in-house or for clients. So, moving into our presentation. To start, what is conditional access? Basically, conditional access is a way to give access to your application, obviously. But comparing to like legacy approach, where you either giving access or not giving access, in this case, you can specify on which conditions you can provide access. And we'll go through that in a bit details. However, important remark out of the way, it requires Azure AD Premium P1 or P2 subscription to be able to use it, unfortunately. But switching back to like what is actually, so in conditional access policies, you can create a scenario based on which access will be either given or not given. And if access is given, you can require some additional things. So for example, basically scenario will be who can use which application and what will be the conditions. By who we mean like specific users, is it group of users, is it roles, we can use dynamic user groups and so on. By applications we mean basically any application registered in Azure AD. And then we can specify conditions, and conditions might be like block access immediately. So we can specify that these users, if they access this application from these type of devices, they don't need to have access. That's possible. Or we can be a bit more flexible and we can require MFA, require device to be hybrid Azure AD joined, require device to be compliant, and so on. So basically that gives us a flexibility in terms of what exactly, on which conditions we want access to be granted to users. And if to give grants access, what are the additional security measures we want to implement? Now, let's imagine we created conditional access policy. So what will be the options for us to monitor this policy using built-in solutions? Obviously, and that's actually the only thing we can have, is just to going through sending logs. So in Azure portal, go to sign in logs. Here is a specific column called conditional access, and that's it. So that's the only way. I'm not touching the option that you can just enable something and wait for customers to scream, but at the moment, if we're talking about out-of-the-box solutions without additional cost, without additional infrastructure, anything, that's the only option. So let's go into Azure portal just to see how it looks like. Basically, as you can see here, we are in Azure Active Directory Blade. It will be the same in Entra portal, but basically we open sign-in logs Blade. And here we have our sign-in logs. And as you can see, we have a column called Conditional Access. So that's the only thing we can see. Yes, of course, we can go into specific event and go into details. Like, for example, here, I can see that, okay, conditional access policy require compliant device. Then I can go into device information to see why exactly it's failed. So obviously device was not managed or browser was not correct, but it gives me some information. The problem obviously is that it's not a scalable approach. So if I have like thousands of users in my Azure Active Directory, there is no way I can look through these logs manually. So that lead us to an option like, okay, if I want to export these logs and try to analyze them somewhere later. Yes, we can download files, as you can see, but as you can see as well, there is a limitation. So we can download only like 100,000 records per file, meaning that like we can generate one file. Yes, we can split logs into, like, for example, capture them every day and so on. So that can help us. The problem is that it's, again, not scalable solution. So out of the box, options we have as a summary, just to look into sign-in logs. Not scalable approach, can help you to like get a glimpse about what's going on, but you won't be able to look overall picture. Yes, export is working. If you have not a lot of users, you can just export that in Excel file and just create your visualization there. But again, not scalable. So moving on, what we can do if we integrate conditional access policies with Log Analytics Workspace. So obviously, we can stream Azure AD logs somewhere. So in our case, we're talking about streaming Azure AD logs into Log Analytics Workspace for on-demand analysis. Bear in mind that just streaming also require you to have Azure AD P1 or P2, meaning that, yes, I mentioned that conditional access policy require the same type of licenses, but for example, if you don't have conditional access policies and you want to stream sign-in logs somewhere, you still will have to have P1 or P2 license anyway. And then after we stream the logs out of the box, immediately we'll have basically pre-built report or workbook created by Microsoft for you. In this workbook, you'll be able to see some basic information about how your how your conditional access policy is behaving. So you'll be able to see like state of devices, platform, where people are connecting from, sign-in risks if you have like identity protection enabled and so on. So it will give you some information. It's already helpful. But the most powerful thing, obviously, is Log Analytics Workspace itself. Because if you have access to raw logs, you basically can create whatever report you want. So you'll be able to analyze anything there, whatever you want to see. So you'll be able to see like, okay, who is failing, why they're failing, what type of categories is failing. You'll be able, in case of troubleshooting, for example, to, I don't know, look into specific users, for example, create graphs immediately, and so on. So let's go into Azure portal to see how exactly that's looking. So for this pre-built report, basically we do have here in the sites and reporting, Blade, we do have this workbook. So as you can see, it has some pre-built information like sign-in details, events, and so on. So at least you started to see some high-level information about what's going on in your environment. However, problems is that, as you can see, there is no option to customize that. So if you want to, for example, add more data here or to see more detailed information, you won't be able to. It's good as a start because like it's refreshed automatically. Also, you can specify for each specific conditional access policy to show this information, time frame, and so on. So it's helpful out of the box. Why not? But if you want to have like the full power of conditional access policies to be available for you and to be able to understand what exactly is going, you have to go into Log Analytics workspace to look into logs directly. So in our case, let's go into our Log Analytics workspace and I'll just show you how exactly it looks like. So here we have, for example, like sign-in logs. Yes. And it exports basically everything here. So all the information we might have will be displayed here. And the beauty of sign-in logs is basically that we can specify whatever we want and into our query. So for example, here, for instance, like, okay, I want to know how many failures we had for conditional access policies. So we can just create a query where we're basically saying how many failure event we had by conditional access status overall. So it will show us like how many events happened, like 3 failures not applied. So obviously in your live environment, pictures will be a bit different, but here you have like flexibility. Then we can add more information like, okay, I don't want that to be only for 24 hours. I want that to be split in 1 hour bins. Okay, create. Now we have more data. But for example, I don't like table. I want that into chart forms. Okay, render bar chart. Here we go. And it will create basic visualizations out of the box. As you can see, it's pretty powerful tool. You can create any basic queries you want, and not only basic. For example, like, okay, if I go into some conditional access policy, so as you can see, it has information about device. So I want to have this information. So I want, for example, to this field to be extended, and then I want to have my summary information to be shown by device platform or operating system. So let's see that. And here we have macOS device and Windows 10 device. We can even add here information about users. So like user display name, easy. It will add it. So like test users, myself, which device you were used, and so on. So basically, the beauty of Log Analytics Workspace is that it gives you way more flexibility than anything. And at the same time, like if we go into like previous insights and reporting, you notice that visualizations looks pretty basic. And the reason for that is quite interesting. Basically, these are also Log Analytics queries. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is basically that you can use that as a basis to build your own report. So if you're just starting, you are not proficient in Custo query language, which is used in log analytics, and you want just to have a bit more data, you always can go into that Insights and Reporting blade, look for the graph you want to see, look into log analytics workspace, query for that, adjust it, and use it wherever you want. And then if you go into log analytics back, basically you can create your own workbooks here. So you can create new workbook, add there your queries, save this workbook, that it will be saved, refreshed automatically. You don't need to bother at all. And that's a beauty. But problem came to us is that basically it's not easy for people to use that. So for example, if you need to report the status of conditional access policies or anything, it's difficult for people to tell people like, here's a query, go to log analytics workspace, run this query, you'll be golden. And that's unfortunately it's not working. So you have to do something in a different way. So either just do a screenshot, put it in PowerPoint table, or do something differently. And when we're talking differently, I mean integrate Power BI here. So why it can help us here? And the reason for that is pretty interesting and simple. If you're working in a log analytics workspace, there is a section export, and basically that allows you to generate a mQuery, how it's called, and this mQuery can be added into Power BI as a data source, and basically that will help you to create Power BI report based on your log analytics data. And this report will be it can be pretty beautiful. It will be interactive visualization. You can save it into cloud, then configure backend integration between this report and your log analytics. It can work pretty beautifully. All you need is just Power BI, and that's it, and existing log analytics. And on top of that, because Power BI, it's a debatable thing, but we can say that it's a full ETL solution, meaning extract, transform, load solution. So we can join together data coming from different sources. So for example, we have a data coming from Azure Design logs. We can take data from Intune on top of that and merge them into one single data set into our Power BI and bring this data together. So we can visualize statistics together, like device compliance, together with like sign-in failures or anything else. And that's a beauty. So, and for example, another use case, as you saw into the sign-in logs, we have pretty basic information about user itself. But let's imagine we have export of user information from Azure Active Directory. We can also add that into Power BI as a data source, merge them using user principal name, and then we can enrich these sign-in logs with having information from Azure Active Directory. In my experience, for example, I was building reports which was also showing some information about like user grade or something, because it was important for a specific project. So it's really helpful, and I'll give you even more flexibility. So let's go into Power BI and just quickly try to look how exactly it's working and how to configure that. So here we are in my virtual machine where I do have Power BI installed. So what we can do, let's go look into sign-in logs. So for example, here's a basic query which gives me all the logs. Let's add something just that to be interesting. So for example, we want to extend information about operating system, browser. What else we want to have? Let's add location details. So country, region, city. here I did a mistake. Let me correct that. As you can see, it's pretty easy. So now you don't need to like write anything by yourself. You can just select extend and that's it. It will do that for you. So in our case, extend browser, extend operating system. Okay, so I now have information which is a bit enriched, so I can see information about location, browser, operating system, and so on. So there is a bunch of field. So how I can put that into Power BI? Pretty easy. So we can just go export, Power BI M as a M query. It will generate us this file. So we just need to copy this file, go into Power BI, get data, other. Here we'll have a blank query. And here in blank query, basically we need to go into advanced editor and put query here. Click done, edit credentials. It will ask us to log in, obviously. Okay, connecting. And now it downloaded some of the data. Okay, so now we have all the data we wanted into Power BI. So we can now build whatever we want. We can, I don't know, create information about how many people were failing and how many were not failing, and so on. So there we have all the power of Power BI. But the most interesting piece is that we can then link it to refresh automatically. So if we publish that, first we need to save it locally, but then when we publish that into cloud, it will gives us a way to integrate it directly with Log Analytics workspace. So let's see how exactly it looks like. So here we opened into Power BI web version. It's not clear what we can do from here, but basically if we go into our workspace, we can see that something we uploaded is basically a report, but then underlying the report we have a data set, and into this data set we can go into settings, and as you can see there is part data source credentials. So the thing is that basically we can configure credentials here and then create automatic refresh. So let's try to do that. So specify OAuth 2.0, sign in. So now, as you can see, web data source updated. We do have our credentials, and now we can select refresh. And for example, we want that to be refreshed weekly, except weekends, at specific time, for example. And that's it. So after we click apply, that means that every time we specify here, it will connect on the backend to your Log Analytics workspace, pull that data, and then refresh it into Power BI. And in Power BI, you can just share data with whoever you want inside your organization and use it pretty easy. So that's the beauty of Power BI. Let's go back into my presentation. So as we covered how exactly Power BI can help you, so let's just briefly touch how you can start. So actually right now there are a lot of great learning resources which you can use to learn both Custom Query language and how to work with Power BI. So to be specific and to mention, there is one good Microsoft Learn material specified specifically for Custom Query language. Yes, it's called like data analysis in Azure Data Explorer, but Azure Data Explorer is basically your own managed version of Log Analytics. and basically usage of custom query language is almost the same. So I do encourage you to go through that to be fluent with QQL. Then, if you already went into that, you already know something about QQL and you want to have like more challenges to yourself, I do really encourage you to go through Custo Detective Agency game in quotes, where basically you'll have to go through a set of tasks to find something in data. So it's quite challenging, it's really interesting. If you're into QQL, definitely go into that. And then, last but not the least, is to like design effective reports in Power BI. Again, it's Microsoft Learn course, but basically it covers all the basic how to work with Power BI. So that's the end of my session. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for next sessions. Everything will be interesting. So thank you and goodbye.